Hi, friends, and happy Mother's Day on this May the 10th of 2020. And I'm glad to be with you here at Unity of Kern County. And I'm Reverend Chuck. And today we continue our series on the spiritual 12 powers that we are able to activate in our lives to enhance our lives. Those powers are faith and love, strength, judgment, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, enthusiasm, release, and of course, life. And if you ever have any questions about any one of the 12 powers that we talk about, please feel free to contact me through Messenger on Facebook, or you can contact me at my email address, revchuckunity@yahoo.com. And as we do each and every time that we present this message, we activate that presence and power and activity of God and that presence of God in our lives through prayer. And so I like to use the Charles Fillmore prayer that he used each time that he presented a message. And so let us pray. I am now in the presence of pure being and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge your presence and power, O blessed Spirit. In your divine wisdom, now erase my mortal limitations, and from your pure substance of love, bring into manifestation my world according to your perfect law. And so it is. Well, today we do continue our journey on how to develop the spiritual power of love, that divine attribute that is within us all, the essence of God, that image and likeness of God that we have within us. And at the same time today, we also honor all mothers who represent that divine feminine of God's image and likeness in all humankind. Now we know that Jesus had lots to say about the divine spiritual power of love and how to express it in our lives. In fact, his last words to the disciples were, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another as I've loved you. And for this, all people will know you are my disciples. And of course, I understand that to be, if you follow the teachings of Jesus, if you practice those principles that he taught in your life, you are also a true disciple, and people will know that by your actions. He taught that we must exhibit unconditional love. That is the love that God gave all humankind. However, apparently, humankind has forgotten it in some way, because physical love, the human love based on the human condition of life, is filled with all kinds of rules and regulations. So what happened? What happened to that innate essence that we had that was love unconditional? And how did we get to the point that we can't express it? If humans have that ability to express us, as Jesus taught and actually showed and demonstrated, well, maybe we need to look. And that's what we're going to do today. Look at that energy of love and how its misuse based upon the human condition caused many problems in people's lives. In fact, it wasn't until the late 40s and the early 50s that psychologists and doctors started really looking at this essence of love, looking at this energy of love, looking at this thing called love in our life and in our affairs. And how does it affect us and when does it affect us? Well, there was a study done back in 1953 by a doctor in England by the name of John Bowlby. And what he did was went to all the orphanages in England and studied the infants and the toddlers there to find out how they were being treated and if that treatment had anything to do with their issues when they became into adulthood. And of course, he found that the little ones had all the basic necessities that life is needed, and that is food and shelter and clothing. But what he found was the essence of no love, no support. The staff was there, and what support they gave them was not emotional. It was all physical: food, clothing, shelter. That's it. All right. And of course, a lot of discipline. And so over time, he realized that a change needed to be made, and he made that change. And he wanted the staff to start cuddling them, to play with them, to have interaction with them, what we call today FaceTime. And so changes were made in that system, and the workers were encouraged to spend one-on-one time with the children. And what he found years later was that there was a big difference in how these children grew into adults and how they became more empathetic, more loving, more caring, more forgiving than those of their predecessors that did not receive love and support. So the premise he came up with was basically this: children need to be loved so they can develop into real, well-adjusted adults. It was, after all, an affirmation that we need human contact, that we need tenderness, that we need love. And Dr. Spock, Benjamin Spock, and many of you have heard that name, he was a prime motivator in helping parents learn how to parent and to love their children in such a way where they were able to grow into the type of adults that needed to be able to have tenderness and caring and empathy towards others. So there's a lot to be said about that early process of energy, that love energy on a human level. So much so that just recently, in the last 20th century, not too long ago, that they realized that infants in the NICUs were having a hard time adjusting and healing and overcoming the challenges that they had as babies, until they realized that, whoa, they weren't receiving love. They were in an incubator or in some type of enclosure where they didn't have any human contact. And so someone came up with the idea of formulating a cuddlers program where these individuals come in and they cuddle and they share love with these infants. And what they found out was that they developed a lot faster, in that they were able to have actually unconditional love personified. And they were able to survive and thrive a lot better than those that didn't receive that type of cuddling, that type of love. And what was realized was that this was true unconditional love personified. When you think about it, there was no conditions placed upon the infants, and there was no conditions placed upon the cuddlers. They were there to share the love that they had. And in turn, the infants shared the love that was within them, the innate love. So there was a connection between the two. And thus they were able to survive and thrive in that environment. Now, there's no doubt that a mother's love for her infant is unconditional, and it's pure love. Countless poems and stories have been written on the feminine love that births in nature's new life. This divine energy and power is life-affirming. It's healing. It's sustaining. It is a love that loves just for the sake of loving. So why is it that we're able to manifest and apply this unconditional love to infants? But when it comes to young children, when it comes to adolescents, when it comes to adults, we have a very hard time doing that. In fact, it unconditional love and that energy, that true essence of who we are, tends to disappear under a shadow. And that shadow is the human condition. And we revert back to those barriers we put up as humans that tell us that we need to be conditioned. We need love to be conditioned. And so when humans approach love on that physical level, it does become conditional love. Love that is based upon the premise that certain conditions must be met. And that is true physical love, not spiritual. It's not based on spiritual needs. It's based upon our physical needs, our wants, our desires, whether they are true or untrue. So we set up rules and regulations. In fact, we don't have to look far to see how that type of love affected us in many different ways. If we just look at our own childhood, how many of us were told, I'll love you if, or do it my way, it's the highway. Therefore, is it any wonder that we tend to look outside ourselves for the love we desire and we want? Learning to use love as a spiritual power is essential to our sense of well-being. If we don't, then we end up on a journey to find love in all the wrong places and in all the wrong people, because we've been conditioned just to do that. Just if we don't find what we are looking for, if the love that we thought we had matched our ideal at that time, then we end up being depressed and feeling unloved. In fact, there was an article written a while ago by Dr. Ellen McGrath, who worked upon this issue. And this is what she wrote, and I'll quote from her writings. Love is critical for your mind and body, just as oxygen is critical. It's not negotiable. The more connected you are, the healthier you will be, both physically and emotionally. The less connected you are, the more you're at risk. And what is that risk? The risk of being depressed, unloved, not thinking that anybody wants you, your sense of self-worth. It's all tied up. She writes, love is probably the best antidepressant there is, because one of the most common sources of depression is actually feeling unloved. Most depressed people don't love themselves, as they do not feel loved by others. They also are very self-focused, making them less attractive to others and depriving them of opportunities to speak what they really feel. Think about it. When you're depressed, do you really want to get out there and have people tell you you look bad? What's happened to you, and tell you what you need to be doing? These are things that the human condition gives us. And yes, we all live in it. So another aspect of this that can put someone in depression is the mythology that our culture has developed over time, over centuries. Look at the troubadours and the sonnets and the books and the plays and the movies, the songs and the TV programs we have today. They tell everybody what love is. Do they really? What they're telling is what love is on a physical basis, what love is according to the human condition. Very few movies ever depict unconditional love. And when this happens and an individual finds themselves at those crossroads, depression often sits in, because that person passively waits for somebody to come and save them. Someone to come and say, I love you. But love doesn't work that way. Because to get love, to keep love, you have to go out and express love yourself. And if you can't love yourself, like I said last time, if you can't love the skin you're in, how do you expect somebody else to love you back? Now, most of us get our ideas from popular culture. We believe in something or someone that comes in and sweeps us off our feet. But the ideal of love is based upon unrealistic images. It's something we create in our own minds, based upon the culture, based upon entertainment, actually. How many young girls look for that Prince Charming, think they find him, then end up not? It's part of our national vulnerability, she says. It's like eating junk food, constantly simulating by images of instant gratification. We think love is simply that, and we need it. And out of that comes a consequence, she says, is when we are faced with and experience that instant gratification, we experience the high, and then all of a sudden something happens and we fall. So we become upset. We become disappointed. We blame ourselves. We get angry at ourselves. How could I fall for that? I thought they loved me. And a lot of other things that just did not fit into our image of what love was. Some of us get demanding and controlling, wanting someone else to do what we think needs to be done. And so we manipulate. And in doing so, we set ourselves up for failure without realizing that the love that we perceived based upon our ideal had been misplaced. And so it's a lot to think about. And for many people, it is a situation where they need to come to terms with, what are you really looking for? What is it that you want, in your life and in your affairs? So there are things that need to be looked at. And here are four areas of our lives, anybody's lives actually, that is very telling on that. Number one, look at the way you feel about love when you are with another person. Do you see them as an individual, free to express their love, or do you place conditions on that love? If you love me, as they say, you'll do this for me. Or, if you love me, you won't do that to me. Is the love you feel based upon an ideal or an image or a fantasy you have held about a feeling of being in love? Is this love you feel toward them as deep as the love you feel towards yourself? It's a good question. 2, watch the words that you use and sometimes the terms that you use to express love. And you have to ask yourself, are they loving, supportive, healing, caring, encouraging? Or are they demanding and controlling, unsupportive? Such as, if you really love me, you do what I want, or what I'd say. 3, look at how you communicate, not just with those words, but with the body language. Actions, as the old adage says, speak louder than words. Do you dismiss the other person? Do you give them a look of disdain? Do you turn your back? Do you walk out the door? Do you refuse to discuss anything in a non-threatening way? And 4, remember that the other person is not you. They are two very different beings, each one with gifts that they share, and that sharing and that gift should be treasured. This way, allowing another to use their gifts they desire not only to bless them, but to bless people around them. And all of this speaks to the idea of unconditional love being free of constraints, free to be expressed by those that wish to express it. Now, we've all heard of high school sweethearts who got married, spent a lifetime together, raised a family, and then sometimes even died days or weeks apart from one another. What were they expressing? Did they have challenges in their lives? Did they have issues to overcome? Were they also part of the human condition? Of course they were. But why did their love and why did their commitment to one another last for so many years? Well, it had to do with how they saw each other, spoke to each other, communicated, body language, and realized that they each had gifts, and that one who was stronger in certain areas helped the other who wasn't. And they negotiated, and they compromised, and they allowed unconditional love with the activity of forgiveness to be active in their lives and in their affairs. And so next week we're going to look at that. Well, not next week, I'm sorry. Week after next. And the reason why is I'm going to be gone to our retreat cabin in Louisiana. There's work that needs to be done. We had major damage from a tornado that went through, not on the cabin, but on the trees in our front area, the oak trees. And so they all need to be taken care of. And so I'll be out there for a week or so, about 10 days. And so I will not be with you next week, but I will return on the 24th of May, and we will continue this series of love. And one of the areas that the cabin is situated in is a blackout zone. So there's no internet, there's no Wi-Fi, and I have iffy phone service. So I'll be back, and we'll continue on the spiritual aspect of how we can use love, unconditional love, in our life and in our affairs. Until then, I wish you all a happy Mother's Day, and may you be safe, may you be well. God bless you all.